Alrighty, well, I know we'll have more people drop in as time goes on, but the interest, since we do just want to limit this to an hour and we have stuff we can talk about for days probably, so we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you, Dr. Kori. I hope that's okay if I call you Dr. Kori. I never have asked you what you want to be called. But thank you for joining us today. I'm very excited. I'm personally very, very excited. And I know there's a lot of people excited to talk to you or hear you speak as well. Emotional eating is such a huge issue for everyone really at some point, especially us women, and for various reasons that we'll get into today. So I'd like to start out, if you want to give a little brief history about your background, and even maybe touch base a little bit about, I know you did dabble in horses there for a while, which obviously is my group's interest. So if you want to touch on that briefly and whatever you want to go with your background and kind of introduce yourself to us.
Yes. First, thank you, Jenna. I so appreciate the invitation. I was really excited when you reached out to me, and I do have a bit of a background with horses. It was fun to connect on that. I started riding when I was about 8 and got involved in 4-H and rode until I was 18 and went off to college. And at that point, it kind of as I wasn't concerned about my body. And I didn't even necessarily grow up until I hit high school. Comments being made, but to back up a little bit, my background is really it's in counseling and therapy. My degree, I'm a therapist, but I provide coaching to individuals, and the majority of my clients come to me because they want to disentangle themselves from dysfunctional relationships with food, with their bodies. And oftentimes what we find underneath that is a very fraught relationship with emotion. So that's, I think, a lot about what we're going to be discussing a lot about that today, emotions especially, and moving into and shifting into a different relationship with those. Many of us have, we've created a lot of barriers to feeling. And, I feel like our task in life often is to create a greater capacity within us to be able to feel more. We're so often focused on feeling better all the time. We need to be happy all the time. We miss the real gold, so to speak, in being able to feel the full range and have the full capacity of emotions in our lives. So that's basically what I do. I have a business called Core Capacity, and this is where I meet individually, one-on-one, privately with clients. I sometimes will run groups, and offering them the space to explore these areas and develop a greater, more expansive capacity to be in their lives.
Fantastic. Sorry, my internet connection cut out right as you were starting to introduce yourself. So if that happens again and I look like I'm not responding for some reason, that's what it is. We're having weird weather here in Kansas for this time of year. So I'll chalk it up to that. Yeah. I know we have a lot to discuss, but I think we'll just start by touching on how common is emotional eating. I mean, it's stigmatized a lot, but I also feel like people don't like to talk about it. I think we all have done it and we all kind of beat ourselves up by it. And you can further elaborate on this, but is it always bad? So touch on how common it is, and is it always bad, or can it be good?
I love the question. Is it bad? Because I do think that when we say emotional eating, we are looking at it like it's bad, it's wrong, it's shameful, I'm a bad person because I'm doing it. And if we could just back up a bit and take a bigger view of this and explore the possibilities in a different way. We all eat emotionally. Every single one of us on this planet eats with emotion. And if you think about how much or how different situations in our lives revolve around food, that's not something we necessarily want to get rid of. Food, like food is very connecting. We celebrate with food. We celebrate difficult times with food, but we also celebrate lovely times with food. The holidays typically revolve around food. Funerals or wakes revolve around food. So we're not, I don't think, if we're looking at this with a broader perspective, going to take emotion out of eating. Now, that being said, there are times when we just need to eat to get nourishment. I know, I'm a cyclist. Sometimes I'm on the bike and I'm very in tune with my body and I'm like, I need energy right now. And I'm shoving a Cliff Bar down my throat. Okay, so we experience the physical sensations that tell us I need food right now. So no, emotional eating is not all bad. What we have to do is really look at the context of how it's happening, where it's happening, our internal environment, what is going on when we're eating physically, emotionally, psychologically, intellectually, because it operates really on a continuum, and that's how we have to really view it, is what's going on, what are the circumstances, what's the situation, because it looks different for everyone. So I hope that helps give some context to it, because we do often see, like you said, the culture will look at it like emotional eating is bad. And what I like to kind of bring into the conversation too is, can we maybe even look at it like emotional overeating? Because a lot of people who come into the conversation about emotional eating, they're dieting. And so you have this population of people who are dieting, who are eating in a caloric deficit. And for many of us, we're dieting so stringently that our bodies are going to be producing signals that tell us eat. And it's really difficult a lot of times to differentiate. Sometimes we're not going to, especially if you're in a very low caloric deficit and you're experiencing significant hunger. We can confuse the signals between like anxiety or uncomfortable emotions with significant hunger. Everyone here has probably heard the term hangry, right? So when we're hangry, what do we notice is going on inside of our bodies? We notice the physical sensations. Oftentimes we're shaky, right? Our heart rates are more rapid. We are breathing more shallowly. We may be kind of sweaty. We lose focus. These are all the same sensations and symptoms that we would experience with like high nervous system activation. So activated emotional intensity, anxiety, worry, frustration. You're in an argument with your partner and you become what's called flooded. You're shaky. You can't really focus anymore. You can't think clearly. So they can be easily confused. So a lot of times if a client comes to you and they're like, I can't stop emotional eating, we can't automatically assume that they have a problem. They may be restricting far too much, dieting way, way, way too rigidly, and we're misinterpreting the signals. This person probably needs to be eating more adequately. So just to add a little bit of nuance to the conversation, it's highly contextual.
I think it's a good point to touch on, just given how pervasive, I don't know what you want to call them, fad dieting, extreme dieting, these diet programs that are sold as weight loss programs, that they're quick. I know it sounds, I'm blanking on the word, but when people say quick fix diets, like everybody kind of knows what that means, but they shrug it off and don't really pay attention to it. But the problem with that is the more you force your body into such a steep deficit or a crazy diet, and you mentally think you're like, oh, I can stick to this for 6 weeks, but you you're physiologically pushed back even harder on that. And I think people don't take into account what that does to you on a psychological level, and that then you feel like you're a failure, so how does that type of dieting, if it's the fad dieting, the yo-yo dieting and whatnot, how does that maybe rewire our brain signals and not a healthy manner? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, Jenna. I'll just add though that it doesn't even have to be a fad diet. I mean, most of the people who are listening right now or watching this, they're probably familiar with flexible dieting and macro-based dieting. And, when I got into the fitness industry, I was helping people lose weight with macros. And I had done this myself prior to offering weight loss coaching. And you can still diet at a very, very extreme level with flexible dieting and macros. So it's not always just fad diets or extreme dieting. It's going to differ from person to person. This is highly individual because not every body is the same. Not every body processes food in the same way. Not every metabolism is the same, but you're spot on in terms of the body pushing back. And, our egos get in the way here because we want to treat our bodies like objects. So many of us are like, no, my body will do what I tell it to do, as opposed to having a relationship with our bodies that is trusting, that is kind, that is compassionate, that is honest. Like I prefer to ask my clients to pretend that their body is another human, that they have they're going to have this relationship with this human for the rest of their lives. And so how do they want that relationship to feel? It's a give and take. It's a back and forth. We need to communicate with each other. We need to understand each other. And that will only happen if we're willing to start listening instead of being like the commander and the overseer of everything. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, remind me of the question again.
It was just how maybe cyclical dieting and whatever extreme measures or not extreme you want to put it in, but what does that do to our brain signals then that makes it harder to kind of get out of that cycle of
well, the wires get crossed for sure. Because in a situation where we've said, okay, here is my goal, these are the behaviors that I'm going to engage in to get that outcome or that result, we are forced to, when we're in that very rigid dieting situation physiologically, we are forced to ignore those signals that our body is giving us. So I'll just use a personal example. I used to compete in physique competitions. I've been retired since 2011, but I had to diet very, very stringently to get to 5% body fat in order to be competitive on that stage. I was hungry all the time. And I can intellectually recognize that. And I could feel those signals constantly. My body was constantly telling me, you need food, you need food, you need food. There wasn't a single time where I would finish a meal where it would be like, oh, I feel totally satisfied right now. And so in that sort of environment, you are saying, okay, you're hungry and you can't eat. Or, okay, I know you're hungry, but you're going to have to wait till the next meal. Or, okay, I know you're hungry, but you don't have any macros left, Kori. Like, you're going to have to go hungry until you wake up tomorrow. And like anything, the more you do it and the more habitual it becomes, the more automatic. So this goes with emotion too. So the more that we push away an emotion that's uncomfortable or feels unpleasant to us or has been deemed unacceptable, the more that we shove it down, the more that we go to food or we find a scapegoat. so that we don't have to feel what's arising within us, the more habitual it becomes. So it doesn't actually take very long. The more that we do something, it doesn't take very long for it to become where it can begin to feel automatic. But in this situation, it can feel very frustrating because we so badly want our bodies to change, and we so badly want to lose weight, and we so badly want to get leaner. But the body's like, dude, like I'm hurting, you're not feeding me adequately. And it feels like this internal fight and this internal struggle. And so for a lot of us, it's really demanding that we ask some tough questions. We ask some really hard questions. And I know we're going to get into like, why are we so fixated on changing our body so much? And how has the culture kind of put us in this position of believing that our bodies need to be different than they are, or they need to be smaller, or they need to be tighter, or they need to be more muscular, whatever it is. But underneath kind of your question is, we have to ask, like, why am I doing this? To what end am I doing this? And what am I creating by doing this? What habits am I creating? Is this actually healthy? You know, in my work with my clients, I say, everything you do, all the ways in which you think, you are practicing something. Are you practicing things that you want to be practicing? Are you practicing ways of being in your life that are functional, that are vital, that create energy, that expand you? Or are you practicing things that are making you small, that are making you hide, that, you know, are contracting you, that make you not want to show up in the world as your best self?
Yeah, that brings up 2 points. And I think with that, we'll touch on how has culture as it is today. I mean, we all hear about photoshopped models on magazine covers, and we kind of think about that, but we don't really take it in, I don't think, as how common that is. But yet we are constantly comparing ourselves to that. And this is, again, something we've all heard, but like, really, how impactful is our culture that we live in to what we think our body type needs to be?
We're so manipulated by it, right, Jenna? I mean, if you go back in time, you can see over the decades how the ideal body for a woman specifically has changed. Remember what Marilyn Monroe looked like? And then
It was
there
like
was
a size 12, maybe.
Yeah.
You know, which,
and right now, the average size for a healthy female is between 12 and 14. That's what the majority of women, if we're going to talk size, which is a whole other big thing, the majority of women that's what size they are. And so many of us can look at that and be like, whoa, that's unhealthy. But we can't look at someone and deem them unhealthy just because of the size they wear or the size of their bodies. That's the whole can of worms that, you know, that we're opening up here. Is there's a lot of weight stigma in this world, and especially within the fitness industry. We have so many labels for the bodies that we might think are unhealthy. They're lazy, you know, fat has become a bad word. We actually need fat to function well. Another just personal example here, when I was competing, sure, and I've seen you post something similar about this, Jenna. When I was competing, okay, 5% body fat may win me a title on a physique stage. 5% body fat means that Kori doesn't have any libido, that she looks like, and again, we're talking about look here, but she looks like a prepubescent boy. She never smiles. Okay. She doesn't have any energy. She has to push herself so hard to work out twice a day. She doesn't have any energy to do much of anything except work and train. She was not a happy person. She was not even like stable. She was just getting by. Okay. Now I don't actually know what my body fat percentage is currently. I don't know what my weight is because I don't stand on the scale anymore. I don't measure my quality of life and my health by the number on the scale or the size of my pants or how my body looks anymore. It's how am I functioning? How stable do I feel energy wise, right? How is my libido? How energized do I feel every day? A sense of vitality. Do I want to go out and train and move my body? And I can say yes to all of those things. So, oh gosh, yeah. Just over time, if we look at the different ways in which the culture has said, hey, this is how you need to look, we're very, very swayed by that. And so, what I always encourage my clients to do, because we tend to be in little silos, little pockets. Like if you look at your Instagram feed, how diverse is it? Look at your Instagram feed and see how diverse is it, or all the bodies that you are seeing, are they all ripped and super lean and muscular, or are you getting a sense for the broad diversity of bodies that are incredibly functional, that that exist in the world? Because we are so manipulated by and swayed by and influenced by what we see and what we put our attention on. And so giving our brains more different feedback, different information can help us to see, wait, whoa, my view of normal is so skewed here.
Mm-hmm. So how does one balance a goal of potentially wanting to lose weight or affect their body composition, even if it's not a weight thing necessarily, but it's not be what would be considered disordered manner?
Yeah. I think,
in your opinion, can that be done?
I think it has to be done incredibly carefully. And I think if we're going to embark on that sort of a pursuit, we need to do it unimpulsively, and we need to get really in touch with the reasons why. Because I have had tons of uncountable number of clients come to me and say, I want to be healthier. I need to lose 20 pounds. And I'm like, wait a second. So what are the indicators what indicator lights are going off right now that say you are unhealthy? Do you have, this is where it gets murky, because a lot of times, in order to get healthy, weight loss is not necessary. If I have a hard time going up the stairs and I want to be able to do that without breathing hard, I don't need to lose weight to do that. I need to practice going up the stairs more. So carefully, very reflectively, skillfully, with someone who looks at the whole picture, your whole life. How come? Why are we aiming for this? What is it going to get you? A lot of people want to lose weight because they don't like their bodies. Okay, well, personal example again. When I was 5% body fat, all I was doing was picking my body apart. I don't know. I have never met anyone who loses the weight and then is really, really happy with that. It's it oftentimes feels like it's never enough. So there's work to be done. I do feel like it's possible to balance a goal like that. But like most things in life, let's ask why. Because just on a very general level, there are lots of things that we do because we've always done it, or because someone else has said it's a good idea. Lots of us are pursuing goals that we didn't really choose. really carefully and thoughtfully and deliberately and ask the tough questions like, actually, why am I doing this? For what reasons? And is this the behaviors that I'm choosing, like tracking my food to lose weight or whatever, is that actually going to help me feel healthy? What does that actually mean? So we need to define things for ourselves. We need to get really up close and personal with it. And I recognize, Jenna, that question, most people ask that question because they want a practical sort of step by step. Here is how here is how you lose weight and manage the emotional stuff at the same time. But there's no one answer for it.
I think it's common. I mean, even speaking personally, I've been out to dinner with a group of women, and if I'm not dieting, let's say at the time, but across the dinner table, you'll hear about so-and-so doing this diet and so-and-so doing this diet. And then you almost feel like you're the odd man out because you're not dieting. So it's like, you get bombarded by these messages all the time. And, like that's your emotional side speaking. It's not your rational side speaking. It's always a hard balance for sure.
And that's, I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's where the internal work becomes so important. Like when we hear, I'm dieting and this is the diet I'm doing and I'm working on losing however much weight, and gosh, I'm so happy I fit into my whatever size pants now. It's like, am I doing something wrong that I'm not talking about this and thinking about this all the time and spending money on this and putting so much energy and effort into it? And this is where, hang on, wait a second, like, do I want to spend so much of my valuable time and energy and effort? Do I want to prioritize that? What are my values? I want to feel healthy. I want to feel vital. I want, it's like, what does health mean to me? That to me, that's an energy drain. Constantly thinking about, what the number is on the scale, what size clothes I'm wearing, how am I going to change my body? I would much rather spend time focusing on, man, these are all things that my amazing body does for me. Holy cow, like that is awesome. How do I capitalize on those things, the strengths, changing the relationship instead of relying on these external measures that tell me whether I'm good enough?
Absolutely. So on that note, would you maybe discuss a little bit what the difference between disordered eating looks like compared to a diagnosable eating disorder?
Yeah, so there are various disorders, obviously, that we could talk about that are diagnosable. We've got anorexia and bulimia and orthorexia, binge eating disorder. So they're diagnosable when they meet a certain number of criteria from the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. Disordered eating is we don't meet the criteria, but we are exhibiting some of the symptoms, and it's dysfunctional in our lives. It's wreaking some havoc. It's creating some pain. It's taking up a lot of energy and effort. It's getting in the way of us being able to live, full, healthy, meaningful, purposeful lives. We notice like we're spending a lot of time, a lot of energy, and I'm isolating probably in some ways. Like I feel like my diet has become so small, so rigid. We may have like different physical symptoms, if we're not eating adequately, like different things like that. So that's it, just on a baseline level. For disordered eating, it means that we don't fully meet the criteria to be diagnosed with an eating disorder.
So, and what within that line, when do you suggest somebody get or seek professional help?
So, we're coaches. we're coaches. I'm a coach and a therapist. I don't think there's any bad time to seek professional help. I think anytime we notice like, man, there's some stuff I need to explore here. There's some uncomfortable thing. I'm doing some uncomfortable things here that I want to understand better. I want a broader perspective here about why I am doing this in the first place. What's causing this? Are there some things that are under the surface that I'm not necessarily conscious of right now, and I want to dig into it. I know I want to change. This is dysfunctional for my not just my relationship with myself, my relationship with food, my relationship with my body, but the other relationships in my life. It's like, let's ask the question, if my life were a pie, and the different slices of my life, that's my emotional life, my physical life, my intellectual life, my relational life, my spiritual life, fill in the blanks, which ones of those are being affected by this? You only need one. You only need one of those to be affected, in my mind, to say, I want to understand this better. Let me start working with a coach, because this person is going to be able to ask me questions. This person knows more than I do. This person is going to help me, break into different areas of this, which I wouldn't even know to consider. So
Yeah.
you don't need much to say, gosh, I would really like to work with someone here on this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first step is kind of becoming aware of the fact that maybe it's controlling you too much. And then obviously the second step then is reaching out or seeking out more information to try and get yourself beyond that.
Well, if you feel like you keep banging your head up against a wall about something, it's like, maybe I need some support here. Maybe I'm not understanding something. Maybe this person can open my eyes to, seeing this in a different way. Yeah.
And almost maybe humanize it a little bit. I think we all feel like we're out on an island when we do these things, and we're kind of shameful and, don't really want to talk about it or admit to it. And I know this also, I have obviously lots of friends or acquaintances that are women, and nobody talks about some of these things, but then I get people that answer questions and what's your biggest struggle kind of thing. And I mean, the large majority of women say binging or emotional eating. So it's something people really deal with, but people don't want to admit it that they deal with it. So let's talk on the binging a little bit. If it's not binging, purging, like a bulimia type situation, then, what do you say to somebody that just says, I struggle with overeating, stress eating, emotional eating, binging? I don't know if those mean different things to you that you can explain to us or not, but.
Well, it does, all of it, because all of these can mean different things to that actual person. In my role, I want to get a better understanding of what their eating looks like. So paint me a picture. Take me through a day in the life of your relationship with food, with eating. And I like to go through it mentally. Tell me how you talk to yourself when food is involved, where your body is involved. And then practically, like, take me through a day in the life of what you're consuming on a daily basis. Are you restricting? Is that restriction actual physical? So you're only eating within a certain parameter, right? I only eat within certain macros. Or is that also psychological? So there are thoughts around, I shouldn't be eating this. This is bad. This has too much fat. Oh, whoa, this has way too many carbohydrates. Nope, have to stop here. What's the thought process around it too? And with binge eating, in particular, there's often this lack of a sense of control. And if we're bordering on the far end of the continuum of binge eating, often it's, you're not present at all. The behavior feels like you're in this, it's very cloudy, this sense of lack of control. It's euphoric. Like, a lot of people will get done with the end of a binge and not even really know where they were, or it feels like they kind of disassociated and they don't know what happened. But for many of us, what we're describing as emotional eating or binge eating, it's eating to the point of discomfort. So they can feel physically a lot of times like they're uncomfortable, or it's eating to the point of emotional discomfort where they're like, oh, they may feel physically fine, but psychologically they're beating themselves up because they went over the parameters, they went over the macro numbers. I wasn't supposed to do this. Oh, I self-sabotaged again. So again, it's teasing apart like which part of this is actually physical and which part of this is psychological. What does the self-talk sound like? Where did you get the numbers that this is an appropriate amount of food for you? And if you are constantly binge eating, maybe we need to look at how much are you eating adequately throughout the day? Because it's kind of like feast or famine. If we're restricting so rigidly and we end up binge eating, why don't we just eat more overall and then try to lose like more slowly and more consistently, so we're not suffering through this process.
I think the mindset of being in restriction, and I know you know this, Dr. Kori, but the stricter your mindset is about restricting a certain food group, whether it's carbs or fats evil or desserts or you name it, the harder that restriction is in your mind, then the more powerful that binge restrict cycle can become. So maybe you could touch a little bit on really what a binge restrict cycle may look like for those that aren't even aware that's what they may be doing. And then if you have any tactical recommendations on how to stop breaking that cycle.
Yeah, so again, we can physically restrict by not eating, and we can psychologically restrict by saying, I'm not going to eat anymore. Or, because I ate this, and then we have some sort of defensive tactic. Because I ate this today, I'm going to restrict my calories by however much tomorrow. Or we compensate in some way like that. Or I'm going to exercise for an extra hour or do an extra hour of cardio, for example. So we can look at it like this. The binge is caused by the restriction. So we severely restrict, and that puts the body on the defensive, and it's going to, throw out more and more signals to eat. And then we binge, and the next binge is again facilitated by the restrict that's on the other side of that binge, because we're following up the binge with another restrict. So the idea is to stop restricting. We have to stop restricting in order for the body to be like, oh, I don't need to feel threatened. I don't need to like go on the defensive because you're not going to feed me. Oh, okay. And so now the body starts to trust that it's going to get adequate food. That's really, really hard for a lot of people because we get so, become so automatic and habitual. Oh, I went over. Oh, I ate too much. Oh, I feel a little uncomfortable. That was far too many calories. And the automatic response is to be like, gotta rein it in tomorrow. I'm gonna go do a bunch of cardio right now. Yeah. So the idea is, let's get really curious about internally what's going on for me here. Let's just pay attention to the label, because I think it's really important to get to that. It is normal to eat to the point of discomfort sometimes. That's normal. And like you said, Jenna, let's normalize it. That is not bad behavior. That is not shameful behavior. That is not undisciplined behavior. That's normal. Food is palatable. Food tastes good. Hey, we're pretty darn lucky that we evolved to like food. we evolved to like food. That's a good thing because we need to be nourished to live full and full lives, right? But so again, we've got to get really curious. We have to adventure inside and be like, ooh, yeah, look what's coming up for me when I eat just a little bit more than what I said I should, than what the macros said I could. Wow. All of this self-talk, all of this, the urge to go purge that in some way, the urge to compensate in some way, the urge to punish myself in some way. What is that?
This is something that I have struggled in the past with, never to what I would consider an eating disorder by any means, but disordered for sure. And I think in my own personal experience, as soon as the next morning when I started waking up feeling overfull and uncomfortable, and I quit letting myself think that I needed to go do more cardio, or that I was, ashamed or feeling guilt. And I just chalk it up to, just get back on your routine, just go back to normal. And that in itself, I mean, that does take a lot of courage and power in the beginning, but it starts to kind of chip away at the power that binge restrict cycle, can have on you.
It's beautiful, Jenna. Yes, we have to say, okay, there's got to be some alternatives here. And oftentimes it starts with having, a bit of compassion with ourselves, because we get so used to being demanding and harsh and critical and no, it must be done this way. And we become very black and white. And when we're talking emotion and we're talking about feelings, self-compassion is going to be our ally through all of this. It's like, what if I soften around this just a little bit? Like, ooh, and that if we're not used to that, that can feel really, really hard. And so it's just like, we've got to dip our toe in the water.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just touch it a little bit. Okay, I'll pull it back out. Let me touch it again. What does it feel like to soften? Many of us, we weren't taught that. It's so unfortunate to me that we're not taught self-compassion, like when we grow up in school, like, or how to just feel emotion, or that all emotions are good and valid, and so are all bodies. Like these to me are just such general lessons that none of us got. And so for you in that moment, like when you said it took a lot of courage is not hard. It's not harsh. Courage is like, to me, it's fierce compassion. It's, God, I got to do this differently. I am enough here. Like, I'm enough. I am worthy of this different source of attention and compassion and love and concern.
Yeah, absolutely. Nikki, you had your hand up.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, I mean, I'm trying to get better with the compassion.
Yeah.
And I'm coming back from 2 years just over of not working out and gaining a lot of weight back because I had chronic Achilles tendonitis in both legs, which was extremely painful. And now I know why we retire horses with tendon injuries, because every time I started to feel better, it did something, it hurt again. I'm trying to get away from exercise as punishment for what I've eaten and more into it's a celebration of what I can do again.
There you go.
But for me, the emotional of reading what's hard is probably more stress. I switched jobs. It's been with COVID, education sector has been very, like healthcare, it's been majorly impacted by COVID and switching classes to online and all of this stuff. And I'm trying to stop myself using food as a solace, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, that was a crappy meeting. Now I have 5 more things to do. I should go get a cookie. Or finishing the day and going, oh, I should really go have a glass of wine. Like I'm trying to get away with that. Because do I really need the cookie? Am I hungry? No, I'm not.
Okay.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm stressed that there's an emotional reaction there, not
So
hunger.
I would ask you, Nikki, what is the true need inside of you? What's under the stress? What's the need? What are you wanting?
I suppose it's feeling overwhelmed and a lack of control over how much I have to do.
Okay. And so
Right.
what is underneath that sense of lack of control? If I were to ask you to kind of like fill in the sentence stem, in this moment, if I could nurture myself, I would have a sense of,
I suppose control or that I'm not feeling overwhelmed. Right.
so you're wanting a sense of calm.
I guess that's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
Maybe you want to feel stable, you want to feel settled. Maybe you want to feel like, maybe you want to feel a sense of confidence that what you're doing is meaningful, purposeful, appreciated.
Yeah, I'd say that. And I mean, my new boss appreciates me. That doesn't stop the fact that I'm down to now managing 26 curriculum
It's a
projects,
lot. Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
a lot.
It's a ton. So the other part would be to really explore, like, how am I nourishing my body during the day? Am I actually getting adequate food? And then just on a nervous system level, like, start paying attention to your breathing. Because what I find with myself and with my clients, when they say they're constantly stressed, they're like emotionally activated all day. No wonder they start to feel frustrated. They're shallow breathing all day long. It's like,
Yeah.
like when we
Yeah.
take a full, deep diaphragmatic breath, like you can feel how your system just like goes, "Ooh."
No.
Whoa. It's almost overwhelming in the moment when you take that deep breath and you consciously slow down how the focus changes in your mind, how the sense of calm and stability changes in your body. It's like, I wonder for you, if maybe you know how sometimes we have watches that'll say it's time to move.
Yeah.
If like you set up something on your phone that went off once an hour, that was your cue. It's like your indicator light on your body dashboard to just take 2 full, deep, diaphragmatic breaths.
Yeah.
And extend the exhale, make the exhale longer, because that actually activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is that rest, digest, calm. And do that it's like an internal reset. You know how I'm so guilty of this. I've got like 3 browsers open on my computer. Every browser has 20 tabs on it. And I'm like, why is it running so slow? My computer is overloaded. Like, that's what happens to us. We got to shut down some tabs. We got to do a reset. And that breathing could really help you do that.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I've been trying to move. I mean, I try and get in a workout at lunch, and if it's a really bad day, instead of reaching for cookies that I'm trying not
Yeah.
to keep in the house or bake, that you need to get outside for 20 minutes.
Sure, get some sun, get some fresh air.
Get some fresh, especially now spring's finally arrived here in the Great White North.
When I just started getting curious, like, okay, what are my patterns of behavior here? Because I'll be in sessions most of the day with clients, right? Sometimes I'll have 15 minutes in between. Sometimes I'll just have 5. It varies. But I started noticing a pattern that, like, especially when I was like, I don't really have time in between to get into something big. Like, I don't have time to create my privacy policy on my website, for example, and I have a task list. I would go eat. I'd go right into the kitchen. It's like, oh, that's a quick thing. Or this is the other time I started noticing, it's like when I finish something, it's like the reward that caps off the thing that I can check off. I go get a snack. So that Jenna mentioned this earlier, it's like, okay, let's just create awareness first. What's going on in your mind that zooms up your nervous system and gets you activated to the point of anxiety? What are you thinking? I should be doing this differently. I'm not working fast enough. I'm not getting enough done today. Start noticing your thoughts. Then start noticing your breathing. And then make sure you're getting adequate meals throughout the day that aren't just carby, because that's going to create anxiety, create cravings for those things you're saying you're eating. So we want balanced meals, right? With some protein, some carbs, and some fat, so that we have stable blood sugar levels. Because if you're a hard worker, if you're eating, not enough protein and more carbohydrates aren't bad, caveat. But if we're not getting enough protein with them, our blood sugar can dive down low after that meal. And then that can create more anxiety. So then, of course, you're going to go find a snack, and a carby one, because you need to get your energy back up. So multiple facets here.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think all that's helpful. And like even today, I've got a meeting starting in 5 minutes and I'm still not through my first bottle of water yet, because I've just been in meetings since 8 o'clock this morning. So it's kind of like I have to try and find ways to fit that in so that I can listen to my body. And it's not the glass of red wine at the end of the day, it's water and a walk.
It wants to work for you. Your body wants to do well for you. So we have to do well for it too. Yeah. Thank you for your questions. Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Based on what you just said previously, I think that is a lot of the same ways you would deal with, your quote unquote trigger foods. I know that's a question I get is, how do I deal with trigger foods? But it seems to me that those strategies you just gave Nikki would apply to trigger foods. It's kind of stop, take a pause, take inventory on where you're at and why you're craving these or why you're wanting these foods, and start there with building awareness.
Yeah, what's behind it? What's the context? Because a lot of times, and you had asked to Jenna about like sugar addiction. There's actually no evidence that sugar addiction is a thing in the scientific literature. But I'll tell you, what I often see is when individuals come to me thinking they're addicted to sugar, they're not getting adequate nutrition throughout the day. So like Nikki mentioned, she's going for those highly palatable kind of sugary foods. Well, it's likely because her blood sugar is low. Maybe she's not eating enough throughout the day. Maybe the foods that she is eating aren't helping to stabilize her blood sugar. So she may be going through these crashes, and the thing with trigger foods is a lot of times those are the foods we've said we can't have. We've said those are off limits. I'm not going to buy them. They don't belong in my house. Like if I have them in there, I'm going to overeat them. And so we've shunned them and we've put them on the bad foods list. And so then when we bring them in, it's like, let's go. It's difficult for us to not go hog wild on them, right? You're chuckling, like all of us have experienced this.
This was me and tortilla chips back in the day. Those were my kryptonite.
Crunchy are my thing too. Yeah, it's not necessarily the sweet, it's the salty crunchy, the crackers, the chips.
Yep.
But so let's look at the adequacy of our nutrition throughout the day. Are our meals balanced as best as possible? And maybe not even 3 meals a day. Sometimes we try to limit it. It's like, let's bring in the snacks and see how we feel. Balanced snack. Sometimes we need to eat every 2 to 3 hours to feel our best. But then with the trigger foods, it's like a lot of times we need to habituate to having them around.
Mhm.
If they're around all the time and there isn't this, I can never eat this rule that we have, this is off limits food, then we have a choice. What happens with trigger foods is we don't feel like we have a choice. Like, I have to, because I'm never going to get this again. Because once we eat it, then what do we do with it again? We shun it. We say, I'm never going to buy it again. And it's just like the binge restrict cycle. So it's like, if I have tortilla chips around all the time, then it's like, well, then I could eat them anytime. So why do I have to eat them right now? They're always going to be there. Now, that being said, if we have shunned those foods for a long time and we bring them in, even if they're there all the time, like we've set that rule for ourselves, the principle, this food is always available to me. I can eat it anytime, full permission. Initially, we may still find ourselves gravitating towards it because it's just like trust with a human being. Can I trust that you'll be here? Can I trust that you're gonna stay or stick around like you say you will? You're testing it.
Yep, I can absolutely confirm all of that. I was like, when I decided I would quit binge restricting tortilla chips, my normal goal was I just never kept them around because otherwise I would eat them all crazy. And then I think it was during our coronavirus shutdown. My husband likes having tortilla chips around, so they were there, and I literally ate them for like 2 or 3 weeks every day for lunch, and not a little bit of them, but a lot of them. But ever since then, I kind of like got over my obsession with them, and they're always available. Like, I don't have issues with them anymore. And that was like a big
key to me.
My cat just came in.
Oh, that was yours. I was like, I thought that was
I thought you looked behind you.
Yeah. Anyway. Perfect. So yeah, I think you got to trust yourself to get through the tough parts and know that the less restrictions you put, the better, the easier things come around.
Yes. It's called habituation. Like, habituation is not always a bad thing. It's, I need to habituate having these foods around just to know that they're here. So I have full permission. And then we don't feel a pull. We don't feel the sense of urgency anymore because it's, you can have it anytime. Yeah.
Very, very true. I want to quickly open it up for anybody that has any further questions, as we are drawing up on an hour here, and I'm cognizant of anybody's time. So if anybody has questions, put it in the chat or feel free to unmute yourself. And other than that, we'll have Kori plug her stuff and tell us about where you can find her at and her services and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, thanks so much again for this, Jenna.
Seems like the hour went very quickly.
Very quickly.
It
always does when we're having fun, and my cat is like, oh,
scratching the surface on this stuff.
So my website my business is called Core Capacity. The website is growyourcapacity.com. And I did, for everyone in your community, Jenna, and those attending this Zoom, I created a discount for my online course that's called End Emotional Eating and Change Your Relationship with Food. So I'm offering it to everyone here for 75% off.
Wow.
So it's only $34.99. And I don't know how best to get that information to you, Jenna, if you want me to just send the link and the code to you and you put it in your Facebook group, or if you want me to put it in the chat here.
Why don't you email it to me so it doesn't go away? With the chat, it'll go away. And then, awesome. I can put it in the group from there, but that's fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. No, I'm excited that you wanted to have this conversation and to open it up for people and to normalize the issue. I mean, I wouldn't have a job if this weren't a thing for a lot of people. So,
and it's so common. It's so common.
Yes. Yes. And so there's no shame in talking about it. And I think so much of this is about just getting a better understanding, a broader, deeper understanding and perspective around what is it and how all of us are involved in this. And I just opening it up for discussion, I think can take the stigma away from it. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. We appreciate you being here. We may have to have you back for a round 2 sometime in the
I love
future.
it.
So there's never ending amount of conversations you can have on this type of stuff. And I'm
Exactly.
always about trying to get this message out there because it is too hidden, but yet so common. So we
Yeah.
can work on
Thank
that.
you. Great.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Kori, and just shoot me that stuff over on email whenever you have a free minute and I'll get it posted in the group. So
I sure will. Thanks again, Jenna.
thank you.
Bye.
Bye.